the current value of dollars, has to draw itself from gold and silver where it originated from. So they are still substitutes. They're just very bad substitutes. And people are trading around inflated currency, and then at some point there's going to be a line and people are going to redeem their real money back to what it was before when this whole thing started, and a lot of people will not get any.
Hi, I'm Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Special of the Week for October 11th through October 18th, 2022. This week we have two specials. First, Kilo Silver Bars from JBR Recovery. These 3/9 fine bars are cast with an individual serial number and are LBMA Good Delivery accredited. They also have the unique distinction of being refined to a high purity from recycled sources. Best of all, they're available at only $3.50 over spot while supplies last. Our second special this week is the 2022 Silver Maple, made by the Royal Canadian Mint. The maple is 4/9 fine and was the first silver coin made to that exemplary purity. It comes in tubes of 25, monster boxes of 500, and is available for $7.25 over spot. Both our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about an IRA with precious metals inside it, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. Our number for all orders is 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're grateful to have this returning guest. Rafi Farber is the founder of the Endgame Investor. He joins us this Tuesday, October 11, 2022. Rafi, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for having me, Dan, again. I really appreciate every time that we get to speak.
Well, our audience appreciates having you on. That's why we got you on in the first place, because they kept bringing you up and I didn't even know about you. And they kept saying, you got to have this guy on. So anyway, thanks for being there and for having created the reputation you did even before I got to meet you. One of the reasons we wanted to have you back on is because you have such a passion for helping people understand the difference between fake money and real money. And based on a statistic that Rick Rule, the former CEO of Sprott Asset Management, often quotes, he says less than 0.5% of the investment complex in the U.S. is made up of either precious metals or precious metals related equities. And when you think about precious metals as being the definition of money in the U.S., for example, by our Constitution and by the Coinage Act of 1792, et cetera, I think it's fair to say in an approximate way there's a 99.5% chance that the average person doesn't have any money. So can you help people understand why even those who think they have money probably don't have any money, why they need to be aware of that, why that's important to people and to their families going forward?
I would couch it a little bit differently. I don't have anything against the word fake money because a lot of it is fake. But I would say it's more accurate to say you have a money substitute. If we're talking about dollars here, then you have a money substitute that is substituting for money at a certain rate that's not going to hold. So let's reverse. Let's go back in time, like let's say 50, 60, 70 years or whatever, and what you're doing is you're depositing, well, let's say even like 200 years before. So you have a bunch of gold or silver and you don't want to carry it. And so you put it in a bank and he gives you a receipt. So those receipts, they're not fake money. They're a receipt for money. So when the bank decides to print more receipts than it has money, then some of those receipts are fake and some of those receipts are real. But since they're all fungible, you can't really tell which ones are fake and which ones are real. So basically, they're all just diluted, which is what we call inflation, right? They all become diluted, and then what happens is, like everyone, when rumors of this spreads that all the bank is printing too many receipts, it doesn't have the backing to redeem all these receipts. That's what they are. Then what happens is the first ones to go to the bank and say, "I want my money," will get it, and the last ones there won't get any. So retroactively, you find out that the receipts that you had, if you're the last ones, are the fake ones. And the receipts that were the first ones to redeem an inflated currency, those are the real ones because you got the gold and the other one didn't. So now we're in a similar situation where everyone has dollars, and basically the ones who say I want my real money, which is the gold or silver that still backs those dollars, uh, then they will get it. Meaning, if you go to a coin shop and you get your coin, you put it in your basement, your attic, or whatever, then you have redeemed your money substitutes for real money. Good for you. And the ones that do it last, they're the ones that, when all of a sudden there's hyperinflation in prices, in price terms, then they won't be able to redeem those gold substitutes for any gold. And so retroactively, they will have the fake ones, even though at this point they're all equally fake because they're all equally inflated and fungible. So you're trying to get out of the system before you realize that the substitutes that you have cannot be substituted back anymore because they've been inflated. So the big mistake that most people make, and the mistake that I made up until about 2 years ago, is assuming that fiat is really fiat, and it's not. There's no such thing as fiat money that the government dictates the value from above. You tell yourself like, where did the dollar come from? Well, the government started printing them and said, use these dollars, and then you will buy this and that. That's impossible. That would never work. And because all prices have to be indexed to the past, which means they have to be indexed to gold, which means the current value of dollars has to draw itself from gold and silver where it originated from. So they are still substitutes. They're just very bad substitutes. And people are trading around inflated currency. And then at some point, there's going to be a line and people are going to redeem their real money back to what it was before when this whole thing started. And a lot of people will not get any. That's just how it's going to be.
That sounds very realistic. I still want to push a little bit harder on this point of people's concept of what money is, because I would claim, without having data to prove it, that the vast majority of people right now think that currency that they're holding, whether it's dollars or shekels or whatever, is money. And that the balance that's reflected on their bank statement of numbers is money in the bank. And that their expectation is that that's going to provide them with the ability to purchase things in the future that are necessary and meaningful to them and for their family, which money is supposed to do over any indefinite period of time and be able to support your future plans in that way. But I would still claim that you're making the accurate argument that this originated as receipts and that sort of thing, and that people just need to realize that trying to redeem those receipts for real money. But the vast majority of people don't even understand, I claim, don't even understand the difference between these receipts and real money. They think they have real money. They really do. And they even criticize those who have been acquiring and accumulating precious metals for some time, saying, why are you bothering to have some useless rock when you can't eat it, you can't use it, it doesn't do anything for you, whereas you can't go in any store and just spend it. So obviously that's the test, that's the functional test, is I've got stuff I can walk into a store, get anything I want. You don't. So how do you explain to someone who has that sort of that conventional wisdom or that normalcy bias, that think they have money and think that that's the measure of it is whether you can transact with it in a shop currently?
How do I talk to those people? Well, first of all, you can't eat a dollar. You can't eat a dollar. You can't do anything with a dollar. Instead of making the historical argument, so what I would say is that when you go into a store and you give them your dollars, you have to understand what it is that you're doing. What are you giving them? Because you're not giving them just something that value came from above. You're giving them a substitute for gold going back in time. And I understand that's good. That's the historical argument, but that still is currently what you're doing. So then why can't you go into a store and give them gold and then get something? Why can't you do it directly? Well, that's just legal tender laws, because they have to account for what their expenses are in dollar terms, so that they don't cheat on their taxes. And this is all artificial, because the government said you can't do that, and we got used to it, so that's what we do now, and that's just how things are. But still, that doesn't change the fact that when you are going into a store and giving them these receipts for whatever it is that you're buying, that you are still exchanging the gold value of those receipts. You're not exchanging those receipts. You're exchanging the gold value of the receipts. So this is what I tell people. Like, right? They say to me, okay, fine. Try to go to a store and hand them a gold coin or a silver coin and see if you get anything. Okay, it won't work. Probably it won't work. But it might work, because if you go to your local shop and say, look, I don't have any money, but I have this gold coin, and I can show you that it's worth this much. Here's the spot price. Here, take this. Give me $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 of stuff. And he might say yes. He might not. Okay, fine. But let's reverse this. Okay. Now I can tell them, and I can be 100% sure of this. Go into a store with a whole fistful of $100 bills that cannot be exchanged for any amount of physical gold anymore. Let's say they can't, because the spot price of gold has gone to $1 million or $1 trillion, whatever it is. You can't do it. Nobody will accept any dollars for any gold because there is no gold. Try to buy anything with that lot of cash. Try. You won't be able to buy anything with it. I'm sure of it. Because in every hyperinflationary economy that has ever existed in the world, the exchange rate between that currency and gold goes to infinity. And at that point, you cannot buy anything. So that proves that when you give over your dollars for those goods that you want in that store, you are actually exchanging the gold value of those dollars. You're not exchanging the dollars themselves. And if those dollars have no gold value, you can't get anything. I'm 100% sure of that.
We did a little experiment at a local farmer's market in the small town where we live about a month or two ago. I walked up to one of the booths that was selling, I believe it was honey, and I asked, do you take silver? And the first person who was helping me looked at me with this quizzical, lost expression on her face. But right behind her, the guy who seemed to be running the shop leaned forward and said, you mean real silver? I said, yeah, real silver. He said, oh, sure. And when I spoke with one of our farmers that we interview on here, he said, you need to understand that farmers talk to each other, and they're down to earth people. They're rooted in reality, in real things, in natural laws, that sort of things. And if after you walked away, if you had done a transaction in silver with one seller, the people at the neighboring booths would immediately have been inquisitive and inquiring about what was that? What did you just do? That there is somewhere in us, inside of all of us, that instinctive recognition of the true value of real money, but that we really have been dumbed down to no longer think about it and no longer recognize it. It sounds like what you're saying is. And I guess I'd like to get your feedback on that. I claim that this little experiment I did was with some people that had their feet on the ground because they are producers of real things. They work with their hands, they work with nature, with animals, and they produce a good that's desirable, in this case honey, to people who need to eat. Do you believe that there's this mind shift that's happened over as we've formed larger and larger complex supply chains and big cities, we get farther and farther, removed from the reality of our food supply, among other things, that it's going to take, they're going to get more rapid recognition on people who are well grounded than people who are really acclimated to the substitution of everything system that we're all living in the modern world.
Yeah, well, it will be faster among the people who work with their hands than people that have a connection with the physical world, because the money is physical. You can't spiritualize it. That's a big problem. And I think we talked about the golden calf.
Idolatry.
That's a twisting of the physical to the spiritual. It's a very big no-no. Not just because God said don't, but it messes with your mind is what it does. That's why He doesn't want us to do it, because we get confused and we don't know what's what. That's the problem with being, a spiritual, physical being with a mind and a soul. You got confused parts, and you got to figure out how to deal with this planet. So it's not it, but it's not necessarily that the ones with the physical connection will realize it quicker. The ones with that are used to substitutes of substitutes of substitutes, and like, they will also get it very quickly. But when exactly? When the dollar can't buy anything. So, like, look, in a state where the dollar can't buy anything, you're going to have to think very quickly of how you're going to get food. And what are you going to say to yourself? Well, maybe if this huge pile of dollars isn't going to work, maybe a pile twice as high is going to work. No, it's not. Okay, so where are you going to go? You're going to, okay, I have this chair, I have this table. Automatically, you're just like, you're you're rooted right back to the physical world because you have no other choice. Right? You can't go anywhere. It just happens to be that the good, the physical good that is the best at dividing value happens to be gold and silver. That's just what it happens to be. So even those people that have no idea what gold and silver is, why anyone would want it, when their money substitutes no longer work, that's where they will go to almost immediately, and they will sell whatever they can for gold and silver because there is no other choice. Right? That we're always forced into the same conclusion, even if they don't get it now, they will get it, and there's nothing that they can do about it.
Is this a first world problem? Let me say that differently. Is this a East versus West problem? Is this primarily a United States and Europe problem, where most of Asia and Africa and all the other countries of the world already get it? They've always gotten it. It's tradition. It's in their culture. They totally understand the intrinsic value of metals, and it's just those who are in the Western civilizations that have lost their connection.
Oh, they've lost their immediate connection, and it goes deeper. It goes much deeper than that. Like the more inflated any sector of society gets, the more disconnected it gets from reality. Whether we're talking about money or we're talking about education, like what's the sector that gets the most government inflated government money in the Western world? It would be like this liberal colleges or universities where you learn gender theory and I don't know what they're what I'm talking about, like all this crazy stuff. There's no men, there's no women, and people with any grounding in physical reality will look at them and like, what the hell are you talking about? And they're like, well, of course it's a theory, but why are they so disconnected from even the most basic physical reality that there are boys and girls in the world? Because they've been getting so much inflated money that they just lose in touch with all of reality, not just what money is, but what males and females are. Okay, that's how far it's gotten. But like when this whole gravy train is cut off and the dollar can't buy anything and the source of the inflation just dies, then they're going to go to Berkeley tomorrow to teach their course on gender theory, and no one's going to be there, and they're going to be like, what do I do now? Use my dollars to buy food? I can't do that either. So I guess I'm going to have to sell my house and get some gold and silver. It'll be that quick, and then all this gender stuff is going to go away very quickly. So the degree of disconnection has gotten just way out of proportion in the West. And generally speaking, the closer you are attached to the physical world, the more you understand. You don't have to be Mises to understand that gold has value. But Mises, he grew up, in the 20th century when modernity started to happen. So he had to like sort of take all of this conceptual stuff, which nobody had a need to understand because it was just natural. Like, okay, so trade gold for this, and gold is eventually used by the jeweler, but you didn't have to put this in your mind as in some kind of theory. So what Mises did and what the Austrian school did was like, okay, so we're losing this tradition now. We're losing it, and we're losing sight of what money is. So like Mises put it all in a book. He's like, okay, this is what's happening in a monetary transaction. Please remember this, so that when you need to get back to it, there will be like a remnant. There will be a remnant that understands what's going on. They can organize before the disaster, and hopefully they can be in charge next time. Like the preservation of any religious system when a religion is under attack. Like you write down as much as you can, you put it away, and you pass it to your kids, and hopefully they get it. And that's what Mises did. He saved the concept of money. So this is why we're talking about it right now. I got my picture in the back there. Thank God for him.
We've interviewed Steve St. Angelo from the SRS Rocco Report. He talks about the collapse of overly complex civilizations throughout history, that when they have, they keep building up, and you mentioned the Tower of Babel earlier, when they keep building up this tower to the sky, and the supply chains have to get longer and longer to bring in the energy, to bring in the food, to take out the waste, to bring in the labor and that sort of thing, that eventually reality reasserts itself, nature reasserts itself, chaos, the fact that you just can't create this area of lower and lower entropy and higher organization and structure and dependency infinitely. Eventually, that it becomes so fragile, it breaks down under its own complexity. And he says we've seen that just throughout history. You've got the Khmer Rouge back, and you can go to every continent of the world, and you'll find the ruins of extremely complex civilizations that that outbuilt their and had overly complex supply chains, et cetera, and dependencies and vulnerabilities. There seems to be an additional vulnerability that you're talking about here that maybe is related to the other one, and that's if you build up enough distance from reality that you become enamored with the conveniences and the beliefs and everything of that structured system, to the point where you really do forget about reality. And eventually that can be moral reality, it can be not being militarily prepared or whatever, and eventually that opens you up, makes you vulnerable to collapse from outside. And you suggested that it can spell the end of overly complex civilizations to lose their touch with reality, and that's what we're seeing evidence of in the West. Do you believe that there are civilizations in the world right now who haven't lost their touch with reality, who are still well grounded, who are still have their head on straight, and who understand what real money is?
Entire civilizations. Look, I mean, there's not one civilization that has it all right. There are many different civilizations that have strength. Look, there's a lot of problems, for example, with Muslim civilization. There's a lot of good things about it, and there's a lot of dangerous things about it, depending on what side of it you're on. But I would say that most Muslims, or all Muslims, not all anybody, but from what I've seen of Muslim culture, they have a good conception of gold and silver and monetary values. It's not like they implement it so much anywhere directly. I mean, Saudi Arabia still indexes to the dollar, so that it's not like they're on a gold standard or anything. But I think I was talking with Crypto Rich, and I believe he's Muslim, and we had a discussion of vegetarianism and like the militarization of PETA, and I wanted to know if it was stamped in Muslim culture that eating meat is it's a good acceptable thing, because it demonstrates that humanity is above animal, which if you don't have that basic value that humans are more valuable than animals, then eventually humans are going to be treated like animals. That's just what's going to happen. I'm not saying that you have to eat meat, that eating meat is an obligation. If you don't want to harm animals, that's perfectly fine. Don't eat meat, don't be part of it, but don't make it a moral issue. So they're strong on that issue. And there are other civilizations. I would say Africans probably have a better value of food because they have less of it. Especially the poor African countries, and they have more of a connection with the land and agrarian society, and that's important. And even the West, even with our messed up conceptions, at this point, we still have a good grasp of the scientific method and scientific process, even though that has been so corrupted. We still have a pretty good conception of what it should be. So we just need to take all the strengths from the different civilizations and bring them together. There's a lot every civilization has what can contribute to a good society, a balanced society, except everything is so unbalanced everywhere, not just in the West, but in the East too.
When you meet people in your daily life who seem to be completely lost but interested in this, where do you suggest they start to get their head on straight about this?
Conceptually or practically?
First conceptually, secondly practically.
Well, conceptually, I would start with the simpler books of Rothbard, because you don't want to start with Mises, and he was very flowery language and this German sort of rhetoric, and German is a very complicated language, so don't start with Mises. But Rothbard was very simple. He has some really good books, like What Has the Government Done to Our Money? America's Great Depression. America's Great Depression might be one of the most important ones, because it really shows how the Austrian view of money really fits into exactly what happened in the 1920s and 1929, and that it wasn't that capitalism took over and there was too greedy, and that's why everything collapsed. That's a very problematic historical myths. So I would start with America's Great Depression and What Has Government Done to Our Money would be the two most important books, I would say. And then everything else is like, if you want to really go deep into it and become a geek, then go with Mises and the rest of Rothbard. But most people don't need that. And then practically, make sure you have, the first thing is make sure you have silver coins that you can access physically in your hand very quickly. Doesn't have to be a lot, but enough to be able to go to a supermarket when your currency doesn't work anymore and say, look, here are coins, give me some food. Then, once you have that down, then you can breathe a little bit and say, okay, now I can start to plan things. And then, find the people that you like, find the people that you trust, and find a financial advisor that understands money, not finance, understands money, and go with him.
One promising development in my experience is I currently have 4 financial advisors who are referring or are interested in referring their clients to us for acquiring physical gold and silver. In the past, that would have been unthinkable to them. Some of their employers will only let them talk to their clients about mutual funds and stocks and bonds and things that can be kept in brokerage accounts under management, that sort of thing. And yet, some of them are breaking ranks with that and saying, no, I'm going to talk to my people about real things, because what they say to me is they're really concerned for the good of their people that they work with. They actually care about the good of the people they work with. And they're saying, if I only keep them within the universe of derivative-based paper financial products and things like that, they may be going to get hurt in a way that I can't help protect them from. Any thoughts you have on that before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, we'll see more of that happening when derivatives and mainstream finance aren't working out. The Nasdaq has broken through its 200-week moving average for the first time since 2008. Bonds are way down. Bond investors are not getting their returns. Equities investors are not getting their returns, and the mainstream financial sector is feeling under pressure. Like, what do I do now? So they'll turn to more traditional, backing because there's nowhere else to go. And you'll start seeing more so the people that were thinking about it, but they didn't want it, but they were making so much money in the mainstream, so they didn't want to talk about it, but now they're starting to talk about it. And then in the end, when everything collapses, even the dollar diehards will be like, well, I guess I got to buy as much gold as possible, but most of them will be too late by then. So everyone's going to turn in the end. It's just we want the more honest people. It's like a filter. Like, you start with the most honest, hardcore people that will die on this hill even if they never see gold rise above 2,000, but they know it's right. So they never got anywhere financially, but they started spreading the money message. And then in the next generation and this and that. I mean, Ron Paul's been at this since 1950s, 1960s, and he's still alive, thank God. And maybe he'll see the day. I pray to God he will, because he's the one who got me into this. So yeah, the mainstream will turn, just because they'll see that we're making a lot of money, and that's what they want. In the end, money unites everyone. It unites them for evil or for good. And as money turns harder and more honest, you'll see more good people coming out of the woodwork and losing their spell, sort of like, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom gets the fire under, the short round, what's his name, that kid, burns him with fire, and all of a sudden the blood of Kali leaves him and he comes back to himself. He's like, yeah, you're back to yourself. Oh yeah, it was a big nightmare. This whole thing is a nightmare, and it's going to end.
Rafi, if people want to follow your work, and a lot of people do, where's the best place they can get plugged in?
You can find me at the Endgame Investor on any search engine. It's on Seeking Alpha. Just type in the Endgame Investor, and it's a daily newsletter. I focus a lot on monetary philosophy and the gold and silver markets, a lot of COMEX analysis, a lot of supply analysis, and a lot of central bank analysis and what's going on in the central bank monetary priests of today. And you can join my patron on Patreon, where I give a more biblical perspective on these things, and from a logical, cultural sort of perspective, not numerology and guessing, the dates and these numbers in the book. I don't do that. I try to learn culturally from what has been passed down to us and apply it to today.
We've been speaking with Rafi Farber, founder of the End Game Investor. Rafi, as always, thanks for joining us on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for having me down again. I really appreciate it.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.